Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawa channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. Hello everybody, welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. It is Friday the 23rd of April, and we are here to discuss anything and everything Islam. Now, in the month of April, we are going to, or we still are, taking a closer look at Muhammad. And we have looked at the different criteria, whether he's a liar, deluded, mistaken, or a legend. And today we're going to ask the question, Muhammad, did he really exist? And we're going to do this with our panelists, and we're going to be doing this with the people in the chat. Welcome to the panel. Welcome to Rob, as always. How are you doing, my good man?
Good evening. I'm well. How are you guys? And welcome to everybody who's viewing either live or afterwards.
Brilliant stuff. And we have Nick of Time. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Stops. Excited to be here as always.
Yeah. And Mustafa.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and happy Ramadan. Ramadan al-Mubarak, and we're still in the middle of Ramadan. And yeah, I'm very excited for today's show, especially the topic. I'm extremely pumped to discuss the existence of Muhammad.
This is actually true. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get a real structure into this because there is so much information. So of course we're not going to be able to deliver the full comprehensive stuff. There are entire books on this topic. So what we're going to do is just scratch the surface, go and give some examples, and go and take a look what we can find. Welcome to the stream, welcome to the chat, welcome to the people who are watching. If there's anything that you want to know, come and ask. If you want to comment, question, and so on, you know what to do. Now, we're going to do our best, as we always do on the Gin and Tonic Show, to stay objective, to stay on top of things, to go and deliver as much information as is possible, based on facts, based on data, not just emotion and not just fabrication or anything like that. That's what we're going to try and do, even though the topic is quite, difficult and is emotionally loaded. We know this. I'm aware of this. And this is why today I selected this header as Muhammad with an empty face, because nobody knows what Muhammad actually looked like, if he did exist. I mean, I automatically assumed that Muhammad existed, the same way as I thought that Sherlock Holmes existed, that Jesus existed, and Moses. And it was only, when I grew up like 12, 13, that I started asking myself, did these people really exist? And then I found out, no, Sherlock Holmes, no, not really. Robin Hood, no, not really. And so then it went, and I looked at Moses, and I looked at Jesus, and I never touched Muhammad. I always thought Muhammad was different than Moses and Jesus. I always thought it's automatically true that he existed. But, well, what, we never know, you know. Now what we do is, this is the inspirational poster that I selected for today. My Lord has always been kind to me. This is a sentence, an inspirational sentence from the Quran, with a beautiful picture of the reddish tinted sky and the moon, the crescent moon up above. But now imagine if you're a slave and you're reading this. Imagine if you're a woman who has just been told talak, 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 and now she's out in the street. Does she think, or does the slave think, my Lord has always been kind to me? I doubt it. What about the kid that is sitting in the hospital bed with terminal cancer? Does this kid think that my Lord has always been kind to me? I doubt it. And this is why I think that some of the sentences in the Quran are actually quite coarse and quite brutal. So I don't think that this is something that everybody will appreciate, the way that it is said and insinuated in the Quran. Now, what we're going to do today is so complex that I doubt that we're going to be able to do everything. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten everything. So the news I'm going to restrict to only one mention, which is on our show from last week, where we have the news that from Algeria that an author of Islamic books has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for offending the religion. He said that animal sacrifice during the Muslim festival of Eid was based on pre-Islamic pagan rituals. He also suggested that parts of the Quran, such as the story of Noah's Ark, might not be literally true, and criticized practices, including the marriage of young girls in some Muslim societies. So this is a very valid criticism, I think. And you get 3 years in prison for telling the truth. That is amazing. I don't think there's any other ideology out there where if you criticize the core tenets of this ideology that you get sent to jail. That is amazing.
Well, like, I wanted to ask something quickly. We had the inspirational quote before saying that the Lord loves you, but like, how does this work? How does one love you but send you for 3 years, send you to jail for 3 years for asking what seems to be a very reasonable question?
And again, like, you know, this is especially with blasphemy law, especially in Pakistan too, like countries like Pakistan. We also have like the protests happening about like the French envoys and like, you know, how the prime minister should like exile them. So yeah, it's quite crazy right now.
Yeah, it's cases like these that make that statement look like more of what a sugar baby will say about her sugar daddy than what an actual realistic god or deity.
Yeah,
I think the sacrifice of animals is particularly egregious apart from all the other things. Does the God require this? Are you still doing it because it's what Iron Age people used to do because they had some fear or whatever the case is? Hopefully people today, well, I say hopefully, they probably aren't. I would have said they're more advanced than that, but perhaps not in certain places. And how is the animal going to help? God doesn't require it, doesn't need it. It doesn't make a difference whether it is or isn't. And just butchering an animal for some old festival that you don't, or ritual that you don't know much about, or I don't think you could argue is of any value today.
Well, it's the idea of sacrifice. It's the idea that you have spent money, you have spent time, you've spent energy to raise that animal, and now you're sacrificing it in the name of your God, so that you are donating some of your time, energy, and money, your resources, to that God. And I think this is the idea, but this is exactly what this is. It's a pagan ritual. So
again, if you wanted to donate something good to your God, why not go and help your fellow Muslims or indeed non-Muslims? That would show that you truly are merciful and so forth, rather than slaughtering an animal that probably wants to live, very likely, unless it's in diseased or whatever the case is. I mean, it's particularly in my mind, because as you know, stops to put my dog of 10 years down, and that's still something I miss. And I would never do that unless it was of the case that continued survival was, as we've had, would be cruel. And so why would other humans do this? Obviously, they don't care about other animals, or if they do, they aren't sort of showing it in any way.
Yeah.
And if you, as you said, it's the reason that you put forward, then we can imagine 1,000 better ways of doing that than killing an innocent animal.
Yeah, and if you want to sacrifice blood, sweat, and tears, like sacrifice your own blood, sweat, and tears, go donate blood or something. Like, why are you that animal didn't consent to sacrificing its blood, sweat, and tears? You're consenting for it. If you want to donate that, go donate that or go sacrifice it, but like not another being's thing without its consent.
If you go to Pakistan, like a country like Pakistan, or grow up in a Muslim country, you will see, maybe, I don't know about other Muslim countries, but definitely in Pakistan, like entire streets are full of red, like the entire floor is, or the road is red with blood. And there's like an animal carcasses everywhere, just gushing blood, or like there's a ritual happening every single house. So it's a crazy. It's like practically a massacre, like a mass massacre that's happening.
Does God love this? Is this what God wants? To see blood flowing in the streets from innocent animals?
Yeah, I don't know if that's what God wants that.
If it is, thank you very much. You've now persuaded me that's not a God, if it existed, that I would want to have anything to do with.
And with that, we welcome Thunderous to the panel as well. Welcome. We haven't seen you for a couple of episodes, so it's good to see you back. Do you want to comment on the current topic, or do you want to wait for the next one?
I'll wait for the next one.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks for popping in. So what is the next segment? Okay, like I said, Krazy Komments are going to be a little bit shorter today. I'm going to start with one that Rob sent me, which is quite funny. Now, remember we came up with the with the old story of the inheritance distribution, that there's a mistake in the Quran that if you add the pieces together, you are left with more, I don't know, portions or whatever than the actual estate consists of. So there are different ways, or two different ways that I know of sort of adjusting this. But these are human solutions which go and contradict the Quran. So you can't say the Quran is correct, and at the same time you need to go and justify it, and you need to go and adjust the numbers to something else. So if the human comes up with a number of 12 and Allah in the Quran says no, it should be 14, who is correct? Is it 14 or is it 12? Allah says 14, the scholar says 12. Which one do you take? And this is, I don't know why people can't just simply accept it. And this guy says, can some knowledgeable brother...
Can I read it? Stop. Can I read it? Can I read it in the voice?
Go for it.
All right. Can some knowledgeable brother, or even sister for that matter, please clarify this issue to these disbelievers? On the surface, yes, the surahs don't add up. I grant you that there must be a context or a hadith which clarifies it, because it is the word of Allah and cannot be wrong. Alhamdulillah.
I don't even know if he was that angry, but it's quite pathetic. Oh, I mean, can some knowledgeable brother, or even sister for that matter? I mean, this shows you so much about this ideology. It shows you so much that a brother knows these things, or maybe even a sister. At least he mentions the female, 50% of the population, the female part, or even sister. It's already showing that he doesn't think that a woman is that qualified to make a statement about this.
But in Islamic recension, a woman isn't authorized to make a comment on these matters, because Muhammad himself said in the Hadith, which is asking for a Hadith to supply the context, said that women only have 50% of the intelligence of a man. That's why it takes two witnesses of a female to be consistent with the witness of one man. But the interesting thing is,
Especially since this is a financial matter, which makes it even worse. Yeah.
It says a concerned, knowledgeable brother. But isn't the Quran supposed to be simple? A book made simple, a book easy to understand, so anybody should be able to understand it?
But Stops, I've got a follow-on comment to that. So if I quickly share it, and we have, who was that? Was that Nick or was that Mustafa reading it out? They can read this one as well. So this was a follow-on from the same person. Before you go to that one, Stops, let me just quickly share this one.
Okay, I thought this was the one you were talking about. Okay.
No, this one here. So whoever wants to read that out, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Okay. Rob Speakers, if you take the Quran alone, I agree with you, along with many other instances for that matter, is an error. But again, in mainstream Sunni theology, other sources can restrict verses. So if there was a hadith that was said, for example, 3 daughters and a mother, or whatever it is a curse from Allah, and their inheritance would be given to charity, then that, although ridiculous, would be consistent with traditional Islamic hermeneutics. Although I choose not to get offended by Bernard Long shitty attitude, I also choose to respond to his idiocy in kind. It's much more constructive to discuss with someone who doesn't have childish outbursts. Why don't you have a quiet word with him and teach him some rationality and some manners while you're at it?
I don't know who this Bernard Long guy is, but anyway. But notice, he's agreeing that it's an error in the Quran, but saying if there was a hadith, and then he says that although ridiculous. So, there's no hadith that we're aware of that does this, and maybe he can pull one out of the hat. That would be a miracle.
But look at the first sentence. Read the first sentence without the parentheses.
Yeah, if you take the Quran alone, I agree with you. It is an error, but again, in mainstream Sunni theology, other sources can restrict verses.
Rob, if you take the Quran alone, I agree with you, it is an error.
Yeah, but they have the mindset, as you and I know, Stops, and everybody on this panel, that there can't actually be an error. So if on the face of it, it looks like there's an error, then there must be something that explains this such to show that it's not an error. And if you could, whatever we do to show that that's not possible, they won't accept. So what he's basically saying is it's an error, but if there's something that overrides it, okay, but what if there isn't something that overrides it? And because again, this isn't the only, what he doesn't realize, of course, this isn't the only example of this. There's plenty of other examples. So if there was a hadith that miraculously appeared that said, hey, with regards to inheritance, if there's anything that oversubscribes where Allah made a mistake previously, I'm now correcting it, well, then you could take that. It would still be dodgy because you'd have to ask why he made a mistake in the beginning, but at least he would have had the foresight to recognize his mistake and correct it later on. But if there isn't, what is this guy going to say?
But it's the first time I see somebody who actually admits if you take the Quran alone, it is an error. First time I see that. The other thing that I find quite silly is that he says, I choose not to get offended. But then everything else that he says after that shows that he's very much offended. Now, I just quickly want to point something out. With this guy, I was pissed off because I explained it to him and he still says that there is some sort of a solution to this where there isn't. And instead of says, these non-believers, somebody needs to explain it to them. Like we are silly fools and we don't see. But the thing is that it's a mistake, all right? There's nothing that you can do about it. So instead of just accepting it, he goes and he starts arguing about it. Now, one thing I want to point out, and this is actually correct, because what I'm saying is you are wrong. Okay, and that's what I do. And this is very different to what Rob is doing, because Rob is saying, well, I don't think that this is entirely correct. Okay, so there's a huge difference in my way of confronting that person, telling them you personally are wrong, whereas Rob does not do that. Rob goes around a bit and says more polite, it could be that there is a mistake in this or something like that. It's not entirely correct, but not the confrontational, you are wrong, but something in that is not quite correct.
Yeah.
And we see the even the doubling of that if we've just seen the example of Pine Creek, who does like something completely different, who is extremely polite, and then he will just say, well, have you ever thought that there might be, I don't know, additional explanations or other ways of looking at this? We're all saying the same thing, right? Make no mistake. It's just different ways of saying it. And this is why this Muhammad Sharif is so pissed off with me, because I'm the only one who says, listen, fuck you, you're wrong. Okay, I've explained it to you 5 times and you're still arguing with me and I don't care. So, like, accept it. And he doesn't like that. Whereas as Rob is more polite, and somebody like Frankie is even more around from the back and things like that, trying their best not to offend that person. Whereas I don't give that much of it.
Yeah.
So I do.
Pine Creek makes me look like I'm a Darth Dawkins.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. It's between me and you, and then the step from you again to Pine Creek.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to add to this point is as well. Like, he's like, this cannot be wrong. This cannot be wrong. And I'm like, it can be. And if it cannot be, like, we should, if it's 100% fact, we should be listening to it. Why should I not be able to counter an argument that's made in this sense? Like, when Kepler made his 3 laws and Newton came on, or Einstein came on, or whoever, we can't say Kepler cannot be wrong, or whatever they want to say, right? Like, yeah,
but this is their God, right? So the difference is it can't be wrong. If they've been, sort of brought up with the idea that this is infallible and it cannot be wrong, then that's the idea they're going to put there. When you have an error, their brain goes immediately to, there must be an explanation for this. It is impossible, or likely impossible, that this could be. That's how confident they are. Now, of course, they don't have the justification to be that confident, but that's what they have. Now, when you critique this, of course, then you find that it's all on quicksand. But they will shout it loudly and proudly until it's critiqued at a more nuanced level. And then that level of certainty they are totally unjustified in having. And if that's the case, then this idea that it cannot be wrong would, of course, be false in and of itself. But you very rarely get there with any sort of nuanced interlocutor.
And then he still says, on the surface, the surahs don't add up. I grant you that. So why doesn't he just put a full stop there and that's it? Instead it says there must be a context or hadith. And I told him, no, there isn't. But he's still arguing because he says it's the word of Allah and cannot be wrong. Now he first says, yes, it is wrong, even though it is the word of Allah, and he acknowledges that it is wrong. And then says, well, there must be a human who somehow corrects his God and says, well, I, the human, know better than my God. God, shut up. I'm the human. I'm telling you now what to do. I don't understand.
I mean, he's not really saying that, though, Stops, if we're going to be a little bit fair. On the surface, it looks like it. So superficially it is. But because the mindset is it cannot be, then obviously there must be a solution to this. That's how the mind thinks. It's by his lights not possible for there not to be a solution. And I've actually responded to him anyway and said, hey, if there were no hadith that could rescue this, then, would you consider this irrefutable, and what would you do then? So we'll see if he responds to that.
Yeah, but okay, what I'm still saying is this whole suggestion that there is a hadith, or this whole suggestion that this owl does somehow rescue this. That is exactly this. It is a scholar saying, God, you don't know what you're doing. I, the human, know better than you. Because when you, God, do this, it doesn't add up. This is what this Muhammad Sharif is acknowledging. He says it doesn't add up. And then there must be a scholar who says, well, there you go. This is the way that it works. So, okay. I do not know how their brain works, how they can go and reconcile this when their God says it needs to be, 12 or something, and the scholar says 14, and then 14 it is. Never mind what God says, what the scholar says is what goes. For me, this doesn't work. Either there's a God or not. So, yeah. It looks like a traumatic experience. Exactly. That's what it is. And they're trying every way out of it. Anyway, then somebody else came and said, please do your research on the academic background of the people who work on this initiative. I personally know for sure that one who happened to be my peer while we were studying for the masters. Oh, this is about Asadullah. This is about Kevin, the Dawa films. What is his name? Asadullah something.
Yeah, Asadullah Ali.
Well, Asadullah Ali or something. And this is quite funny. While we were studying for a master's degree, was never awarded his master's degree due to academic misconduct. Therefore, I would rationally not trust my academic education to people with such past. Beyond that, each one of us is responsible for their own decisions. We're free to choose, but we're not free from the consequences of our choice. Happy Ramadan. And then she adds, Muhammad Hijab is my co-student in SOAS. So it's hijab. It's not Asadullah. It's hijab. So Muhammad Hijab is my co-student in SOS. He made the rest of us to want to throw him out of the window several times, both because of his ideas, but also his method to redirect the conversation in new paths whenever he cannot deal with an argument, and his habit to cut off female speakers. Any lady that cares about her mental health should avoid this event. So I'm sorry, I stand corrected. It's not about Asadullah, it's about hijab.
Wow.
But because Asadullah was so prominent in the last couple of
that's remarkable, right? That a Muslim lady would care to say that. I applaud her honesty, right, to speak out about this. Because oftentimes we atheists will critique each other and so on, but it's very rare that a Muslim will critique. And I know the Christians critique each other, but it's far rarer to see Muslims. Although sometimes they will, if they think it's like an Ahmadiyya or something like that. But fellow Sunnis, for example, it's very rare to see that happening. Certainly like this. So, and that sort of says a lot, doesn't it? So, applauding to her to say it out loud and to be honest about it, and obviously things that we, I think, already knew.
Okay, this is a bit of a long one. This is something that, can I make this smaller? I can make it bigger, but oops, yes, I can make it smaller. Okay, there you go. Now, this is a presentation that somebody put up. And he says in the Quran, it says, he raised the heavens without pillars that you can see. Now, what does that mean? For me, it says, okay, we've got the old-fashioned concept of a firmament, which is solid, which is supported in some documents, in some manuscripts by mountains. And here it's pillars that you can see. So he raised the heavens without pillars that you can see, but it's still with pillars, but not pillars that you can see. And this guy says the function of pillars is to act in opposite to gravity. Today we know that dark energy acts in opposite to gravity, is invisible, and has kept the universe from imploding. The Quran says that without Allah, the universe would have vanished. So there you go. So this is because without pillars that you can see means that the Quran actually is talking about dark energy. And then Allah holds the heaven and the earth lest they vanish, and they say, He is most famous. So they would have vanished if someone else tried to hold them after him. Now, the funniest thing is, if you read this sentence carefully, it says, Allah holds the heavens and the earth so in case they vanish. And they would have vanished if someone else tried to hold them. But this is not what the Quran says. The Quran says if they do vanish, nobody else would have been able to hold it anyway. So what the Quran says, God is all-powerful, He can hold everything, and if He can't, then nobody else could have been done this anyway after Him. This is quite funny, the way that this is being translated here. Anyway, and then what he says this means is Allah is the only one who can keep the heavens from vanishing. Today we know without this dark energy, the universe would have collapsed and vanished a long time ago. So there you go. And because of that, we know that the Quran is speaking about dark energy. Isn't that wonderful?
It's just inserting modern science into... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the mental gymnastics of somebody to try and make something fit. The post hoc reasoning is just so on display. Dunning-Kruger would have had just an amazing time. They should have had some Muslims like these as their test subjects, and it would have just been perfect for them.
This is from the Alexander romance too, like the heavens without the pillars, or he raises up the heavens. I believe it was either the Alexander romance or the Epic of Gilgamesh that I had read. And this is in some other mythologies. I've read something like this idea. So this is not exactly a new idea. Like there was this primitive idea that the heavens are being held up by pillars. somehow.
Doesn't that go back all the way to the Matahazi?
I know it goes before Christ somewhere.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't know how far back. Okay.
Yeah.
But it is ancient old. So
Definitely.
this whole pre-Islamic or ancient, whatever you want to call it, concept of cosmology, it's amazing. Okay, this is from Sapiens, and they're going all in now. Now, for some reason, I'm on their list. I'm on the email list. How I got on this email list, I have no idea. But they're still sending me their stuff. And this is now what they are doing. A parent in anguish trying to deal with their child's destructive doubts. And in some cases, the child leaves Islam. It's heartbreaking, but is becoming more frequent every day. Now, let me just break here. Number one, it's destructive to doubt. And for me, this is the most constructive thing that you can do, to doubt, to be a skeptic, to go and check everything, to verify things. This for me is the best thing that you can do. And then they are acknowledging that it's more frequent every day. For them, it is heartbreaking that somebody should leave Islam. But the youth, and we've heard this so many times, are starting to leave Islam behind in alarming numbers. And this is what Sapiens is acknowledging. It is becoming more frequent every day. So that means they're really getting worried.
Yeah. Do you know what this translates to me, this document? It's basically saying, here's our 4 key plan actions or whatever to the idea of your child leaving our deaf couple. Here's 4 ways you can help fix that.
Now, what it says, okay, you've jumped the gun a bit. What it now does, and this in my eyes is even worse, because now it is abusing what is happening at the moment, that we have a pandemic of this virus. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to take the word pandemic, which now is being seen, or is sort of this equivocation here between a virus that is causing a pandemic. By the way, this is a tiny virus, and suddenly all the gods go into hiding. No god is doing anything about this virus. Medicine, science is doing this. Non-Muslims are doing this. None of the gods. So what they're doing is, one of our missions is to stop this pandemic of doubts. So abusing this word pandemic by empowering and developing others. So this is one of our missions. And this for me is quite sick how they're doing this. So we planned 4 key actions. One is a comprehensive book addressing doubts and arguments in Islam to be published after Ramadan. Okay, we're going to take it apart like we've taken apart all the others. We're going to show that it's quite silly. I'm confident about this. So, number 2, a professionally filmed in-depth course on how to deal with doubts, available for free in the autumn. Number 3, our Sapient Thoughts videos. And number 4, our Lighthouse mentoring service. Now, the funny thing is, this mentoring service only consists of you booking a speaker. In other words, you tell them, I want Hamza sources at the university to do this and this and this. We'll pay you $1,000 or something. It says all for free, but of course you're expected to donate, inshallah. The Sapient Thoughts videos, now, these are like really, they're a joke. I mean, you should see the first one with sources saying, yeah, how dire this is and how wonderful Islam is and how we need to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like hijab telling us that mountains are actually correctly displayed and described in the Quran, which is a pathetic joke. And they're following this up with this. Even during these unprecedented times, our work continues to move ahead, providing the correct information. Can you believe it? Providing the correct information about Islam to people around the world, no matter where they're from and what their beliefs are or the religious background. So click the button and donate now. Help the thousands of new Muslims on the journey. Everything is free, but click the button and donate. Give us lots and lots of money so that we can go and spread our bullshit nonsense, our lies and deceit to other people. Now, we've taken apart all these, no, not all, a lot of these videos. I mean, I've watched a couple, and I mean, I could only chuckle. For me, this is quite silly. how they're going around doing this. So I don't know. Anyway, it shows the desperation by now. It shows how desperate they're getting, trying to get people to accept Islam just to increase the numbers at all cost. And they're not too shy to go and ask for money all the time, more. And they're not delivering anything. I mean, they're too scared to come here. We've been on their shows. We've gone to them and said, listen, you guys are wrong. It like Pine Creek says, if I go and visit somebody, then I would expect them to come to us now and visit us. But they're too scared to do that. And this shows you that because they cannot come here with 20 Muslims to outnumber us, so that they take control and hold the button for the microphone and for the ejection seat and things, they're too scared. And people tell me, yeah, but they're not really scared, and you just want to, I don't know, increase the viewing of your channel and things like that. I couldn't give a continental damn. I'll go to any channel. I go to a neutral channel. But I would very much like to get into a dialogue. I mean, look, Rob tried to get this with Safaz. And he said, yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah, let's really go and do this. Next week, we're going to start. That was 2 months ago. Nothing has happened. Jordan M. came to us and I said, I challenge you. Yeah, come and we will chat. I will show you what is what. It was half a year ago. What has happened? Nothing. So as soon as you go and take them up, they're like big mouths. Yeah, I challenge you. Come on. And what happens? Nothing. I was challenged by this imam from South Africa. And then as soon as I say, okay, let's do it, he runs away. That's all they are. They're just big mouths. Because they're too scared, because they don't stand a chance against an atheist. This is the problem, because with the Christian, they can say, yeah, you have the Trinity and blah, blah, blah. And with the Sikh and with Hindus, they always have this commonality that there is this belief. And they try and make fun of that. But with an atheist, they don't have that. They can only say, you believe in nothing, or everything came from nothing, or chant and things like that, which is nonsense, which you can immediately refute. And then they're lost. There's nothing left. So, okay, let's quickly do.
It's puzzling. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
So let's quickly run through some sentences of the Quran. Remember that I am doing this thing where I go and I read the Quran as such, and then I go and I condense whatever it is that I am reading. Let me just take this out, and then share this with you so that you can see what I'm talking about. Here we go. Junks. Okay, yeah, I think everybody can read this. Let me just go and remove the junks so that we can get the full screen. Okay, good, excellent. Now, before we're in chapter 10, and we're in sentence 31. We went with do bad and you will be punished. We will separate those who worshipped us from those who did not. Allah is a witness, and everybody will be judged. So now we continue. It's chapter number 10, sentence number 31. Allah provides, so fear him. Now, in this segment, there's a lot of waffling going on, and there's a lot which doesn't make sense. So 31 is still okay. Allah provides, so fear him. But 32, it says Allah is true, and after true comes error. What does that mean? What the hell is this on about? And then it's asking, so why are you turned away? I don't understand this question, which Allah is true, and after true comes error. So I have no idea what this sentence in the Quran is supposed to tell us. Sentence 33 says, this proves God is right, and those who disobeyed will not believe. I don't know what this means. Mustafa, you're sometimes reading along, or you sometimes look at these things.
Yes.
Do you make anything of this sentence number 33?
Number 33. This proves, so I have to read number 32 in order to even get an idea of what 33 is even saying. Like, Allah is true, and after true comes error. So even in the translation, Yusuf Ali Corpus, I'm reading, such is Allah, your real cherisher, sustainer. Apart from the truth, what remains but error? How are then ye turned away? So even the real translation, you've just condensed it, even the real translation, I'm not making any sense out of it. And then 33, this proves God is right. So so I think it's the Arabic. Oh, it's the rhyme. It's the rhyme. Okay, so it's like Fazlikum Allahu Rabbukum al-Haqqu famaza ba'du al-Haqqa illa al-Zallul fa'ani tusrifun. So it ends with tusrifun, and the next sentence, yu'minun. Okay, so it's just rhyming the Kazilaki haqqat rabbika ala. Yeah, so it actually, the ending sentence la yu'minun. So the first 32 ends with tusrafun, and then the next one ends with yu'minun. So basically, it's just rhyming. That's the only thing it's achieving. Other than that, I'm not making any sense out of it.
Okay, so it's not me who's being difficult here.
Yeah. So I don't blame you, but the only thing that's connecting these two is just the rhyme. That's it. The Arabic rhyme.
Because I'm always curious. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. I mean, I'm just a human being. I'm just a dude who's reading a Quran. Okay, so this is why I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, no, right, this reminds me kind of like an Indian father. It's like, or a brown father. It's like, I feed you, and if you don't fear me, I will end you. It's kind of like that kind of threat.
It does come out on like he's providing you with everything, and then you're still turning away. So like and it's saying it in a more poetic fashion, like, more like yu'minun, and ending it in like that ancient Arabic poetry.
Okay, so this is like an ancient diss track from father to son.
Basically, from the god, that is.
Yeah, but doesn't it tell you one thing, and that is that it's more important to rhyme than to provide any kind of reasonable contents that makes sense, that is useful. I mean, they always tell me that this is the instruction manual for life. This is the instruction manual on how to get to heaven for salvation. I'm not getting that. I'm getting gibberish, but as long as it rhymes, what is the point? I mean, I'm expecting really useful stuff here. The Quran is only 6-something sentences. It's like a tiny booklet, and I'm expecting really, really good ideas and some insight here on what is required for me to go and get into heaven if there is this thing. Instead, I'm getting just na. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like enchantment. Yeah, it's enchantment. Yeah.
So 34 says Allah can create repeatedly. Other gods can't. Excuse me? What other gods? I mean, it's always saying there are no other creators. There are no, but I'm the best of creators, even though there aren't any others. And here he says Allah can create repeatedly. Your gods, they can't do that, can they? This is like me thumping my chest and saying, I'm the best, as great, as big as everything. I know the best words. Allah can guide to the truth. Other gods can't. I mean, come on, what is this? And then 36 says, most believe based on assumptions, not truth. Really? What assumptions am I making? I don't believe. I mean, if somebody says to me, okay, what you are believing is wrong because of, I don't know, A, B, and C, then I don't believe it. So I'm not, like I just said, I used to believe that Muhammad existed, but that was only one single assumption, and that is he existed. So my belief is the assumption, but there were no assumptions made. I just believed that he existed. There was no real reason for that. And then when I looked into it, I realized that this was incorrect. So I stopped believing it. Sentence 37, the Quran is without doubt. Yeah, not really. I think there's millions and billions who doubt it. Like 90% of the population on this planet doubts the Quran. It confirms...
And this is where the rhyme slightly changes. Like instead of the yun, now it's like mina. And then you'll see like... in the Arabic, sadiqeen, and it goes in instead of un.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I've heard about this. I think Hassan Radwan explained it to us at some stage, how that you basically have only 3 or 4 different forms of endings which are being used in the Quran to rhyme. So, sentence number 37, the Quran is without doubt, which I doubt. And this is interesting, it confirms and explains the Bible and could only have been authored by Allah. Now, this is quite strange because this is a direct contradiction where in other parts of the Quran it says, no, you can't trust the Bible because people have corrupted it. And therefore, it doesn't confirm it, not at all. So this for me is quite strange, quite funny. 38, a question, wow. Or did he invent it? Then bring a chapter like it with the help of anyone except Allah if you are truthful. Now, this is one of the famous chapter like it, surah like it.
Yeah, bring the surah like it, yeah.
Which is quite silly because if it is invented, then anyone can bring a chapter. And why would a God who is so superior come and come up with such a petty challenge? I mean, there is nothing. I don't know. If you take letters and you put them together, you arrange them, you get words. And if you arrange the words, you get sentences. If you arrange sentences, you get paragraphs and so on and so forth. There's nothing miraculous. And there's nothing miraculous about the Quran where we've just seen sentences that don't make any kind of sense. If there is so much wrong with the text, I don't think I've ever read a book that was so badly written. And the funny thing is, bring a chapter like it. Number one, we don't know what it is. We don't know what like it. We don't know the it. There's no definition of it. So what is actually like it? So if I take a sentence in the Quran, like in chapter 4:3, this is my favorite example, and I change the marry women in twos and threes and fours, and I change the wa to an ow and make it twos or threes or fours to actually make it into a maximum number of 4 and not a maximum number of 9. Have I just brought a chapter like it and have I improved it? Yes. So all I need to do is just take any sentence in the Quran, correct the mistake, and I have brought a chapter like it. Or I can just go and turn to Satan, because the satanic verses were proposed to Muhammad, who couldn't tell them apart from what his God told him. So the devil has already done it. Or I can just take one of the versions of the Quran, the dozens, the hundreds of different variants that we know of. I mean, I can just take the Vash version. I mean, this is just the Cairo Islam or whatever version, and that's it. If I take another one, which is similar, it's just a little bit different, then I have brought a chapter like it. So for me, this is quite petty. And then 39, they deny what they can't comprehend. Really, if I can't comprehend something, I can't deny it, can I? Because I don't know what I'm denying. So this sentence, a sentence like this shows that whoever wrote this did not think about anything. And then sentence number 40, some believe, some don't. Okay, that's cool. Now, I think we're going to stop it here. Otherwise, it's going to take too long. It's already taken longer than I actually initially intended because of the discussion that we had about the previous one. But that's cool. That's cool. What we're going to do is let me just do this, close this, do this, sorry, and get out of this and stop sharing. There we go. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into the topic of the month, which is Muhammad. We're talking about Muhammad, and today what we're going to be doing is we're looking at is a false prophet a prophet that doesn't exist? We don't know. So what we're going to look is we're going to look at claims. We're going to look at claims versus reality, and what do we have versus what would we need? What is it that exists about Muhammad in whatever sentences, whatever sources, whatever manuscripts, whatever? What is that? Shall we ask this question? Do we have anything? What do you guys on the panel? What do you guys think? Where do we get our knowledge from about Muhammad?
Yeah, from what I did my research in, it's it's really biased. The information that says that he did exist is extremely biased, and is we can't actually research whether it's factually correct or not. And I think it's a topic of massive debate, and we're not going to get to the end of this because it is on a pillar of sand. But they won't let it crumble because it's going to be crumbling their entire religion.
Okay, but how do we know what we know?
Yeah, I can answer that. Basically, how we know is the very first text that we have is the Quran itself, and even the Muhammad in the Quran is extremely vague. He's only mentioned like 5 times in that entire book, and even that, like it could just be a title. Then we have 100 years later, 100 something years later, we have Ibn Ishaq's biography, the Sirah al Rasulullah. And that's written around 750, 760. But we have that even edited by Ibn Hisham in around the 820s, 830s. So we only have the version that Ibn Hisham did, like he edited out certain things. And then we finally have the Sunnah or the Hadith written by Sahih al-Bukhari, by Bukhari, by Tirmidhi, Muslim, and Sunnah Abu Dawood, all these Persian writers. And finally, we also have Tarikh al-Tabari and Tarikh al-Ibn Qasir. So through the tafsirs as well as like Tarikh of Tabari, this is how we know Muhammad. Like these are the mainstream sources that we know Muhammad from the Islamic perspective.
Thunder? Oh, Thunder unmuted himself, so I automatically thought he was going to contribute something.
Well, I was going to say that most of the information that we know about Muhammad is still like 200 or 300 years after the alleged person exists. You get little snippets, don't you, in the Quran of a man, the praised one. After that, you get the seerah, the biography of Muhammad. After that, you get the hadith. But the more information you get, it seems to be more hundreds of years or decades, certainly at the minimum, several decades away from the event that you find out more about him. So if you're asking me, where do we get our information from? For me, it's you get your information from Muhammad 100 years away from when Muhammad actually existed.
Okay.
Yeah. Also,
I think it's actually worse because Mustafa, you said 5 times. It's actually the construct, the praised one, appears 4 times, but it doesn't refer to Muhammad as such. You have mistranslations,
really,
where they are saying this is something that I fell for, where the praised one, it says as a translation, is the prophet of or the message of Allah. The messenger of Allah. The praised one is the messenger of Allah. Actually, what it says in the Quran is praise the message of Allah, or praised is the message of Allah. So Muhammad as such doesn't actually appear in the Quran. It's just the description as the praised one, or the reliable one, of whatever you want to call it.
Yes, the term, even in chapter 47 too, it's like Bima Nuzzalen ala Muhammadin. So it's not even exactly saying Muhammad, it's Muhammadin. So
it's praiseworthy, exactly.
Yeah, so it's more of it's not exactly a name.
Yeah. And this is the problem that we have. So is there any information in the Quran about Muhammad? No, it just says you're supposed to obey the prophet or the messenger or whatever the case may be. But it doesn't tell you Muhammad was born such and such, he had 5 wives there and this, and he did it. There is nothing about the person. There is nothing at all. So what happened is, now I tried putting this, I have a huge chapter on this in my book, but now to go into that, that's like 300 pages, so I can't bring all that. So I tried collecting Arab accounts during the time in question and came up blank. No Arab source that I could locate mentions of Muhammad and the strange god he introduced. No Arab source mentions a split moon or water pouring from the fingers of a man in the desert. Nobody mentions a camel coming out of a rock, the many battles, or any of the names we come across in Islamic texts compiled centuries later. Nobody seems to know or care about a Muhammad or about Islam or Muslims or the Quran. Centuries later, Muhammad is said to have flown to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem on his winged donkey, mule, or whatever, and tied it outside. But the structure did not yet exist. But if we move it like 100 years forward, then it matches. But then it's only in the 8th century that we finally find a god mentioned by Arabs. And we have the numismatic evidence all of a sudden, which suddenly comes together. But it doesn't happen in the 5th, 6th, or 7th century. It's later. And this is the funny story. The first time that Islam is being mentioned is in the Dome of the Rock. But there, the sentences that we find there do not match exactly what it says in the Quran. It's a mishmash, and this is all about Jesus, and not about Muhammad at all. If we look at the coins at the time still have a Christian cross on them. Sorry, Mustafa, I see you unmuting yourself.
Yes, what's interesting, I wanted to add that the writers of Muhammad, if you notice, Ibn Ishaq, also Sahih al-Bukhari, Tirmidhi and Muslim, most of them are from Persia or far up north. They're not from Arabia, except the writer of Sunnah, Abu Dawud. Abu Dawud is the only one who is of Arab origin. Even though they all studied in Medina, and Muhammad's story also comes in the period of the Abbasid dynasty, not even the Umayyads. So it's like late mid-Abbasid dynasty. So we have nothing about the Umayyads and nothing about the caliphate of the Rashidun or the four rightly guided. We have nothing from that period.
And this is the usual misconception. You wrong. Everything Muhammad do is from Allah, and the Quran said that. Well, then please show us where the Quran says this. The Quran does not say this. The Quran does not talk about Muhammad. Yeah. This is the problem. So if I go and I say, well, an expert in numismatic evidence, for example, is a Steve Heidemann. And he managed to trace the rulers and the contemporary trends through these coins. And he wrote a book, Coin Imagery of the Early Islamic Empire. And he shows that there is nothing about Muhammad. Now, the first Arab inscription referencing Muhammad is in 691. So we're almost in the 8th century now. The first references to Muslims is in 690. In other words, you have Saracen, Hagarean, Ishmaelite, Magraya, and Mahajirun, and things like that. So Islam is a lot later, and you need to go to Volker, Pop, Orlik, and Puin, and this is in the Dome of the Rock, exactly. The first reference to Mecca is not until 741. Okay, this is like more than 100 years after Muhammad allegedly died. So we have a huge problem. And we have multiple attestations of this. We have Kroner, we have Hoyland, we have Holland, and so on. So there's a lot of people who have found this out. And the first biography of Muhammad in Islamic sources is not exactly what you said. It's 9th century, it's 833. So the times that Muhammad is mentioned in 3, 144, 43, and 47 too, it's not Muhammad. And then I've got a long article here on the name of Muhammad, what it actually is. Muhammad received this name many years later, many years. It's the praise, the blessed one, and you have the variations. You have the Ahmed, you have the Hatim, you have the Hazir, you have the Akib, you have the Mahi. So there's different names for this Muhammad. But the funny thing is they all also match Jesus. And this is the funny thing. And I've heard this again and again, not only by Christians, that for some odd reason, Muhammad seems to be modeled around an Arabic version of Jesus. So that Muhammad can be anything, but as white as possible. There are several hadiths which say, I could see the inside of his thigh and it was white. And so his complexion was not this and not this, but either and or. But it's always supposed to be more light than the dark Arab sort of complexion. What is it? The teint. Anyway, so it's quite funny. And you have this Muhammad Abdi Allah once belonged to Jesus, and this was then taken over. And he was not the only one to be called Muhammad. There were names like this even before Islam came around. And then the Muslim sources start around 750, 800, sometimes like 5 generations after his death. So Muhammad only appears like, end of the 7th century, 8th century, beginning of 8th century. And this is like decades after his alleged death. And this is also by Patricia Kroner. And Dr. Mervyn Bendler says, did Muhammad ever exist? He says, no. And he says, neither did the Quran for that matter, at least not in the form or with the status ascribed to it by Muslims. These are the 2 major conclusions of Vickers and so on and so forth. So he goes, and this is a more scholarly work, okay? So he says Alice Sprenger and Ignaz Goldziher, Henry Lammens, Josef Schacht, and all these very well-known names. And he cites them, who wrote what on what page number and so on. And then he comes up with this conclusion, no, there is no way that he could have existed in the way that it is claimed. Then we have Tom Holland, who says, well, if we look at Mecca can't possibly have existed the way that it's described in the Sunnah. And he brings multiple reasons. It's geology, it's agriculture, it's so many things. So right off the bat, the way it is described in the Sunnah, it is impossible for Muhammad to have existed. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at Wansborough or Crone or Cook or Luxembourg or any one of these people. They all come to the same conclusion. It is not the way that it's described. And then we have Ibn Barak. There are too many names to mention here, who are all saying the way that it is described, it's impossible. So there must be another way. And then if we look at the same way as what is done with Jesus, we have to go and look at the outside. And this is then when it becomes quite interesting. Because if you look at Abd al-Malik, Marwan, okay, so he was exactly this end of the 7th century. The funny thing is that his wife was called, or one of his wives was Zainab. Another one of his wives was Aisha. His mother's name was Amina. And his wife's name Aisha was the daughter of his good friend Muawiyah. So the funny thing is, if we look at these 3-4 factors, you would think I'm talking about Muhammad, who married the daughter of his good friend, and her name is Aisha, and that he had a wife called Zainab. So, and the mother's name Amina. So for some reason, we find huge parallels here. Okay, Mustafa. Actually, this is a good idea. If you click on your microphone a couple of times, I can see that you're dying to say something that I can shut up for a while.
No. It's interesting. You mentioned that Amina. Like, I actually had a question. Amina is the mother of Abdul Malik, like the wife of Marwan.
Muhammad.
It's the mother. The mother of Abdul Malik Marwan is it Amina or Amina? How do you say it?
Amina.
Amina.
Yes.
I thought it was Amina for some reason. Okay, Amina. So his mother's name is Amina, who must have been the wife of Abdul Malik, the father.
Yeah, Marwan bin Hakam. Marwan bin Hakam was the father of Abdul Malik bin Marwan.
So it's quite amazing that you find the same names, which then are being used for Muhammad.
Interesting, very interesting. And Thunders, you had something to say?
No, what I was going to say was with reference to the existence of Muhammad as stops as brought out. When you've put that to bed, or when you put that to the side, you have to stand back and look at, say, the other stuff as well, because Mecca has exactly the same problems that Muhammad does as far as existence is concerned. And then when you start looking at the contents of the Quran, you have exactly the same problems with the contents of the Quran as well. I'll give an example, Dhul Qarnayn. So you have a problem with Muhammad, you can't find him in any period of time or in any location, only until after his death. Then you have the same thing with Mecca. You can't find it in any period of time until after Muhammad's death. And then you find the contents of the Quran. You can't find any location for them either. So right from the get-go, everything has a false foundation or doesn't exist or has a questionable existence right from the get-go. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, correct. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so what we see is if we look at the scholars, the non-Muslim scholars, they come to the conclusion that the only source that we have for the existence of Muhammad, any description, comes from Muslim scholars. And it's a lot later than one would, I don't know, expect. I would expect, if I were to now come up with a prophet, that multiple people would be able to confirm this. I mean, Muhammad is said to have been trading extensively across the whole peninsula. He went up to Syria, and Mecca must have been a huge trading post. The funny thing is there is no mention of Mecca as a trading post. It doesn't make any sense anyway. There's no mention of a Muhammad who was a trader, who was the son of a remarkable woman who was special in any way. There is no mention of any Muhammad at the time. And then the only sources we have 100 years later are Muslims who are talking about a Muhammad who, and then they have to wait another 50 years before they can say, well, actually, he's not from here, he's from Mecca. And then he went to Medina. Now, Medina existed, this we know, under the name of Yathrib. Why was the name changed? I don't know. Why did they change the name from Yathrib to Medina?
Yeah, Medina was the word Medina just means the city, right? Or city.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
It was initially called, like, again, according to the Sirah, it started being known as Medina Nabi, or Medina, the city of the Prophet. And slowly it got shortened by, lingo. If you study, if you look at linguistics, you kind of shorten the name to make it easier in conversation. So it just got shortened eventually to Medina. But in reality, it just means city.
Yeah. So if you ask these questions, you don't get any answers. So you look at the facts that you do have. You have the Dome of the Rock, okay? So if you look what it says there, and you compare that with the Quran, you find that there are things missing. Now, the Dome of the Rock existed before the Quran came out, or before any of the other texts came out. So it seems that the texts in the Dome of the Rock predated the Quran, and that some sentences, some parts were left out, which you still find in the Dome of the Rock. But the Dome of the Rock was just, and this was an idea I never caught on to this. I heard from Dr. J. Smith, where he said, if you actually go and you analyze the words on the Dome of the Rock and where it is located, if you put all these factors together, you can see that this is a direct confrontation with the Christians at the time, because they are saying, we are here now and we challenge you. And this is why the texts that you find in the Dome of the Rock, they all refer to Jesus for some reason. Now, in the later Quran, we see that there's a shift towards non-believers. But in the beginning, it seems that this was intended as a polemic against Christians. And this is what it seems that the original intention was. And it's only at a later date that everything changed. And this would then explain all the differences in the different versions of the Qurans that we have. And that would also explain, the differences when you compare the Dome of the Rock to the other inscriptions or to other texts or words in the Quran. So this is quite weird how the context of Islam grew in the early 8th century. And now before that, nobody knew about the Quran. Nobody knew about Islam. When Jerusalem was conquered the first time, there was no mention. Nothing at all about Quran or whatever. It's only at a later date. So what we can only, I don't know, the only facts that we have, the only conclusion that we can draw from all of this is that we only have Muslim sources talking about Muhammad. And all of these only talk about Muhammad at a much, much later date. So there is nobody who writes anything about a Muhammad during his lifetime. There is nobody who writes anything about Muhammad after his lifetime. So the only thing that we can do now is we can go to external, so non-Muslim sources. Are there non-Muslim sources talking about Muhammad? And here the answer actually is no. Even though there are people who say, yeah, there's plenty talking about it. There's this Jacob guy, there's Sophronios, there's Thomas the Presbyter, there's Sebios. All these people, they all talk about Muhammad. Now, the funny thing is, what you need to take into consideration here is that at the time, there are people who also claimed to be prophets. Remember, we did this
Yes.
a couple of shows ago,
Yes,
where
yes.
we went to
Leader
Musaylima,
prophet.
to Al-Aswad
Yeah.
al-Mazitullah, Sajja, and Saf bin
Saf
Sayyad.
and, yes, Saf and Sayyad, yeah.
So there were other prophets. Now, the funny thing is, if you have this knowledge, if you have this information, and you now go and you say, okay, let us take a look at the external sources, then it gets very interesting. Now, if you go, it doesn't matter whether you go to Patricia Kroner or Hoyland or most of these people will say, well, Muhammad most probably existed, because you have all these claims. And it's only recently that people have brought together all this information that we today are able to just assess as laymen, as very, very simple people who've just read the Quran. And it's very easy to go and dig up all these things and to find all these sources and go and verify them. Now, if we go and we look at the Doctrina Jacobi, for example, it somehow contradicts what is said in the Hadith. Now, if we look at the Hadith and we look at only the Bukhari and Muslim ones, we get, or then we add the Sirah as well, because you need that to get an indication or some sort of an idea about the life of Muhammad. You find that he was born round about, this is what they insinuate, around 570, 571, round about then. And that he died in 632. Now, this is what I think 99.9% of all Muslims believe, as far as I am aware. I don't know any Muslim who doesn't believe this. But now, the Doctrina Jacobi comes around, which was written sometime around 34 to 40. And all of a sudden, Muslims are prepared to dump all that and say, well, if it was written in 636 or something, maybe Muhammad was not dead yet. Yeah, but hang on, you can't have both. You can't have the Sunnah, which says you died in 632, and then you have one source which says the Doctrina Jacobi, which says 630, whatever, 5. I don't know, 6. And then you say, well, because it's an external source and because it seems to confirm the existence of Muhammad, now we're going to dump all the others. So that doesn't work. So this was probably written by an anti-Jewish Christian living in the area of Palestine, the south of Israel today. And it's an account of the Arab conquest of Jerusalem. And he said that he surrendered the city in 637. And the whole thing is based on a letter which is written around 647, it seems, by the Patriarch of Seleucia. It's quite detailed, but it makes no reference to the Arab conquerors as Muslims, or it does not show any awareness of a religion called Islam, with a Quran. And now the funny thing is, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, well, why not? And of course he mentions this, and it's the earliest mention of Muhammad. And so, well, the funny thing is, it does not say anything about Muslims or Islam. It does not mention a Muhammad. It mentions an MHMT. And nobody really knows who wrote this, when, and where. Okay, so if we go and we read it, it says, in January they took the word for their lives. The sons of MSR and many villages were ruined by the killing of the Arabs of this MHMT, and a great number of people were killed and captives were taken from Galilee, and those Arabs pitched camp. Now, there's a lot missing. Okay, there's only fragments, so I'm leaving out all the pieces that are missing. Those Arabs pitched camp beside Damascus. Or maybe I can just share this with you, so you can read along with me. I can try doing this. Share this part. Then I will take this out. Gada. There you go. All right, this is the full quote of what it says. So I was just reading from this. So all it says is that the Romans fled from the vicinity of Damascus. Many people died, and they turned. The Romans came the 20th of August in the year 9 something, gathered in Gabita, the Romans, and great many people. Okay, so there are some fragmented pieces of words of information here. Now, to get from this to Muhammad is actually quite difficult. Now, St. John of Damascus, he wrote, there is also the superstition of the Ishmaelites, which to this day prevails and keeps people in error, being a forerunner of the Antichrist. They are descended from Ishmael, born to Abraham of Agar, and for this reason they are called both Agarenes and Ishmaelites. They're also called Saracens, which is derived from Saras Kenoi, or destitute of Sarah, because of what Agar said to the angel, Sarah has sent me away destitute. They used to be idolaters and worshipped the morning star and Aphrodite, whom in their own language they call Chabar, which means great. And so, down to the time of Heraclius, they were very great idolaters. From that time to the present, a false prophet named Muhammad has appeared in their midst. This man, after having chanced upon the Old and New Testaments, and likewise, it seems, having conversed with an Arian monk, devised his own heresy. Now, here, this is the only time actually where it actually mentions a Muhammad. But if you go then, you see that there's a lot of bias, and if you go and you look at the text, we will see this doesn't actually mention Muhammad. So these are the coins. Okay, this is what we said. This is 100 years later. And now I'm looking at Islamic awareness and taking apart, and this is exactly the text that they have taken as a source. And I've said, so number one, which Muhammad are we talking about? Is this really this MT? Is this really Muhammad? And this is a story of a pirate looting villages. We know Muhammad, the messenger of Islam, did this, but how can anyone say with any degree of confidence that this is the same guy? So it appears to have been suggested that so Islamic awareness is not really that confident about this. Then we have their try, number 3, comes up with a person from Armenia. And we've looked at this. He's thousands of kilometers away, and he doesn't really say anything about this. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual contents of what they are saying. All right. Okay, so this is the timeline of all of these people. So Doctrina Jacobi was sometime after July 634. Now, by this time, Muhammad is supposed to have been dead for 2 years. Then we have Sophronios, around about 639. Then we have some fragment of the Arab conquest, 636. Then we have Maximus, and so on. So now, these are all sources mentioning Islam and Muslims, but still no Muhammad. There's 1 or 2 people who actually mention something like MHM or Ahmed or something like this. So the people that are normally taken is the Doctrina Jacobi, it's Sebios, and there are a couple of others. But notice how the dates are going now, like really, really late. So again, the Doctrina Jacobi, and this is a man in North Africa. This is my summary. A man in North Africa receives a letter from someone who wrote about something he heard from someone else who spoke to another person in the street in the region of Palestine, telling him that the prophet had appeared, the anointed one the Jews are waiting for. Okay, so some guy in some area talks about someone, and this in a letter to someone years after Muhammad had died. Was it written during Muhammad's lifetime? No. Does it mention Muhammad as described in the Sunnah? No. Does it mention Islam? No. Does it mention the Quran? No. Does it mention Muslims? No. So this is the summary. Then we go to Sophronius, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, written during Muhammad's alleged lifetime? No. Mentions Muhammad? No. Mentions Islam? No. Mentions Quran? No. Mentions Muslims? No. So what are we talking about? So Sophronius gives a very extensive list and a very detailed this description of what happened, but he doesn't mention all the other things. Then the fragment of the Arab conquests, written during Muhammad's alleged lifetime? No. It's 6th century, not 7th. Mentions Muhammad as described in the Sunnah? No. Mentions Islam? No. Mentions Quran? No. Mentions Muslims? No. So what are you talking about? And here's the original text where everything comes from. Then we have Maximus, written, no. And this carries on. Then we have Thomas the Presbyter, written, and no. So why do people bring this up? So we can go over and over and over. John, the Bishop of Nicaea, then written, no. Mentions Muhammad as described? No. Does he mention the name? Yes. This is what we just, the first time that it actually mentions the name. Yeah. Mentions Islam? Yes. Mentions the Quran? No. Mentions Muslims? Yes. But now we're looking at either the 640s or 690s. We don't know when this was actually written. So the Chronicle is available online, and the work survives only in a GE's whatever translation made in 1602 of an Arabic translation of the original Greek. Sections of the text are obviously corrupted with accidental omissions, most notably a passage covering 30 years from 610 to 640, conveniently missing. And here, this is the original text that they say. Then you have a guy written, no, it doesn't mention anything, but it's often brought up. Then you have Pope Martin, who wrote at the time, but he doesn't mention any of these things. So what I've done is I've collected all the various texts that are available in this time, mentioning anything like that, and none of them mentions Muhammad. Okay, I think that's... because this thing is, I don't know, 200 pages or something. So the historicity of Muhammad, Aisha, and who knows who else. So this is Hans Janssen, and who wrote, Muhammad, as you all know, is the prophet of Islam. The word prophet comes from the Greek, and in Greek the origin means spokesman. And he then builds his case, lack of evidence, is Muhammad a historical figure? And then he shows, no, they're not, storytellers are not historians, he says. And then he goes and does what we just did, and goes through all the different sources, through all the different people. And then he also goes into semantics. He even goes and says Khadija, for example, means dead. Okay, so this he shows that Khadija and Aisha were just created to bring some life to a figure, to a character in a book. Then he goes into Aisha. Why was she invented? Why was she created? And then he says, no, this is no way that this man existed in the way that it is said in the Sunnah. Then what we get, let me see if I can get any more. There was a professor hired from There's an imam and a professor, Sven Kalisch. He says he's Germany's first professor of Islamic theology. So he's a Muslim, And he says, well, unfortunately, Muhammad did not really exist. And then Muslims, not surprisingly, were outraged. Danish cartoonists triggered global protests a couple of years ago, didn't portray the prophet as fictional. Now, German police, worried about a violent backlash, told the professor to move his religious studies center to more secure premises. This is a Muslim. This is a Muslim who said,
Oh, wow.
I don't think that he existed. And then now he is being attacked by other people in the university. We had no idea he would have ideas like this. A fellow academic at this Münster University who sat on a committee that appointed Professor Kalish. I'm more Orthodox Muslim than he is, and I'm not a Muslim. So this is quite funny that people who are able to be honest and you get other. Of course, Muhammad existed, says Tilman Nagel, a scholar in Göttingen. He wrote a book, Muhammad, Life and Legend. Okay, but it's quite astonishing to say that thousands and thousands of pages about him were all forged, and that there was no such person. Now, these arguments are not real. These are arguments from ignorance. Just because you don't know something doesn't mean that you can take a decision based on this. So just because you can't imagine that these pages were indeed forged, that the person was indeed created, made up, and then it just grew all on its own, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Now, what I'm saying, and I need to be very careful, very outspoken about this, I am saying there is not a shred of evidence that Muhammad existed. I am not saying that he definitely did not exist, because I can't know this. It could still be that all these indications that we have here point in the wrong direction. It could be that even though nobody heard of him, nobody saw him, nobody said a word about him, wrote anything about him, it's still possible that he existed. We don't have the Quran in the original version. We only have a copy from the 10th century. That's the first complete Quran that we have. We have some fragments, we have some bits and pieces everywhere, and so on and so forth. They're all different versions, but we don't know which is the correct one. We don't have an original, and we don't have not a shred of evidence that Muhammad existed. So that is, I don't know, this is, what else can I say? So if I go and look at all these sources, this was interesting because Benny now claimed he believes God exists and therefore God exists. He doesn't understand nature, thus God exists. He takes popularity as evidence that his God exists, and he trusts Muhammad because Muhammad said so, and then because of the Quran. And this is what we see again and again, the Quran saying, fear God, obey me, fear God, obey me, fear God, obey me, fear God, obey me, and so on. So this is about Muhammad. And this is what Muslims do most of the time. They simply obey. They simply believe this, and they say, well, we have the evidence that Muhammad existed because it says so in the Hadith. This is the only source that we have. So, again, if we go to the doctrine of... Yeah.
There's somebody in the chat that claims that they can debate this. This Walla Walla TV. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I saw some comments. This is one of these guys who just wants some attention, and he thinks he can bring something. Yeah, but hang on. If you have evidence, then please go ahead. And I don't see the comment right now. What did he say exactly?
I saw him before, and I wanted to bring it up, but you were in the middle of your speech, so I didn't want to bother you. But yeah, I did put it in the chat.
Share the link, mate, and we can debate it. No, you're wrong. Everything Muhammad do. Where is he?
This is exactly why I just read what I just wrote. This is exactly this. He believes God exists, thus God exists. Okay. This is exactly the point. There is nothing that we can debate. There is nothing to debate. And do you have any kind of evidence that Muhammad existed? Yes or no? If you have evidence that Muhammad existed, by all means bring it up. But there is no point now to debate something when there is no evidence. All we have is you believe that something exists, and therefore you believe that exists. So it's a circular thing. Why do you believe it? Well, Muhammad said that he exists. Where does he say it? Well, in the way that everything is about him, and that is in the Hadith. What are the Hadith based on? On Muhammad. So Muhammad says he exists, and therefore you believe it. Why do you believe that? Do you believe that do you believe that Cinderella exists? I don't know. Just because Cinderella says I exist does not mean that Cinderella exists. But please, if you have evidence, I am willing to change my mind. Are you willing to change yours? If you have evidence, then please, by all means, come talk about it. Let's see what you got.
Actually, we do it in Discord afterwards. This guy is one of these crazy guys from Speaker's Corner. He's the friend or some sort of partner of the lady that I think has just been arrested for assaulting Banksy or something like that. So probably not worth bringing on here. If it's the same guy I'm thinking of, he's pretty clueless. I've heard and seen some videos of him. He wouldn't be able to ramble anything. So, but if he wants to try on Discord, but I don't think we'll waste time here on the channel here.
Yeah, and Stops, I have to ask you something. I read about Cinderella all my life. How dare you call it that? She claims to be true in the Disney book. I even saw her on a movie. I saw her on TV. She has to be real.
Must be. Now, the funny thing is, I can't remember which one of them said this, because somebody says, well, it must be true because he has the keys to paradise. And the funny thing is that his competition claimed that. So Muslima said, I've got a block. Anyway, his competition talked about having the keys to paradise. Muhammad never made that claim. And this is the funny thing. So if you read the sources and you actually go through them carefully, this is what happens. So I went out by boat to Sekamina, and they said candidatos were slaughtered, and we Jews rejoiced greatly. And they said that a prophet appeared coming with the Saracens, and he is proclaiming the arrival of the coming anointed one and Christ. Can you imagine a prophet saying that? And when I went out into the community, I communicated a certain prescription. He says, what you say, but okay, what do you say to me about this prophet who is appearing with the Saracens? And with a groan, he said, he is a deceiver. Do prophets come with swords and chariots? Really, these are works of disorder set in motion today, and I fear that the Christ who came earlier, whom the Christians worship, was the one sent by God. Instead of him, we shall accept, and so on and so forth. So, what do we, here, this is exactly, okay. And I, Abraham, thoroughly investigating, heard from those who met him that you find nothing true, this so-called prophet, except shedding human blood, for he says he has the keys of paradise, which is unbelievable. This is exactly what I was looking for. So this is the text, the way that it is written. Now, I'm asking you, did Muhammad ride a chariot in the desert?
He never
really?
rode chariots. He never rode chariots.
Exactly.
He rode camels or horses at best, but never a chariot.
So why would a Muslim now accept this as evidence that Muhammad existed, saying that he has the keys of paradise, which he never said? This is the funny thing about this. And if we go and we look at this Baslima guy, this competition of his.
Musallama, yeah.
Or Musammal, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Musallama. Then he was the one who said, yeah, I hold the keys of paradise. So they're most likely talking about a totally different person. And this deceiving prophet refers to Muhammad. Why would a Muslim believe this? And then these things, my brother Abram wrote from the east, and I, Eustace, believe in Christ, who was born from St. Mary, and so on and so forth. So obviously this doesn't match up. So Robert Spencer did the same thing. Did Muhammad exist? And he also bumped into the Jacobi doctrine when the candidatos and was killed by the Saracens. And he says in this case, incredible means not credible. One thing that can be established from this is that the Arabian invaders who conquered Palestine in 635 came bearing news of the new prophet, one who was armed with a sword. But in the Doctrina Jacobi, this unnamed prophet is still alive, traveling with his armies, whereas Muhammad is supposed to have died in 632. So he also saw this inconsistency here. So there are a lot of...
And he says that this prophet, like in the analysis, can you go up to that analysis? He also says one interesting thing is that the prophet, yes, this prophet is not claiming to be the last prophet. He's not claiming to be the seal of prophets at all, but rather he's claiming to be the anointed, proclaiming the advent
exactly.
of the anointed one. So this is what I find interesting.
And this is why there's a lot of times, and this is why I used to be incredibly hesitant to say this, but there's more and more indication to me that a lot of what we find in Quran and Sunnah and everywhere was actually, I don't know, originally intended to be like a Arabian substitute of Jesus. So we see a lot of these things. And here we have like Muhammad, Mohammed, and Mahomet. And some Muslims regard the latter two spellings, this Mohammed, as insulting. But these spellings were used more commonly in the previous century when the Romanized spellings were not quite standardized. And then there is a small but growing number of scholars of Islam, mostly non-Muslim Western scholars of Islam, who question the existence of Muhammad as a historical person. And however, in November 2008, a Muslim academic held because he also came, and this is now the same Sven Kadish. So there are a lot of sources. David Wood and Dr. J. Smith, they debated this. And this was an interesting debate because they were sort of trying to discredit the other sources.
Yeah, is this the same David Wood that ate a page from the Quran?
Yes, this is the same one.
Yep.
All right, just want to make sure.
Yeah, David, and I watched the debate too, and it was very interesting that David Wood took the the doctrine of embarrassment, and then J. Smith said, no, look at the historical, like when the text was written or what the evidence says. So these are very different approaches, but each had very good points. That is, and they were debating the existence of Muhammad.
And then some people say, well, if you look at the historical sources, the funny thing is that even Muslim scholars are in disagreement. They don't know how everything happened. They don't know whether these names are correct. They don't know whether this is actually a list that is, factual or whether this is fabricated. Nobody really knows this. Then we have the children of Muhammad. Well, we don't have any records of them. And this is records of the early life of Muhammad are scanty. What do you mean scanty? They're non-existent. There's nothing. There's nothing. If we look at Mecca, Mecca is not in a valley. Mecca doesn't have a stream. There's no hill. There's no mountain. There is no way that the cave overlooks the city or anything. These things are true of Petra, of course. So when Dan Gibson saw this and he wrote his book, so this is quite interesting. Now, I'm still a bit skeptical. I don't think that it necessarily is the place. Could be, but I'm not sure about that. But I'm 100% sure that the way that Mecca is described is impossible to have existed. So that we know. So if Muhammad cannot possibly have lived in Mecca, then I'm asking, okay, well, what else do I need to go and investigate? What else can I trust? What else can I take for granted? And then the answer is nothing. The answer is I need to go and check everything. And then suddenly I come up with these things that there is nothing that is confirmed or nothing that can be checked at any time before the Umayyads. The first time that we have anything that is recorded in any way is Muawiyah, and then the Abbasids. But before that, forget it. And the funny thing is, this is then when Islam comes into existence. This is where we hear about Muhammad a couple of decades later. So that's it. And Khadija, why do we have no records? How can a place like Mecca, which is tiny, there is no wall around it, there's no nothing, and then this is supposed to be a rich woman there? From what? There's nothing there. Okay, so I don't know. Is there anything Muhammad modeled to mankind? There's so many different sources here which talk about this, and now it's getting increasingly popular to go and investigate this. And we find more and more people who are saying, well, we can't be sure, and there is no real evidence, and unfortunately it's not that clear who is able to confirm anything about this, the claims. Then we have, did Muhammad perform miracles? Well, I don't know. There's casting out demons. How do you cast out demons? You can't. Oh boy. But now what people are saying, well, how come if Muhammad was supposed to be the goody two-shoes, why do we read so many bad things about him? Why do we read so many things about keeping slaves, concubines, and killing people, and encouraging rape, and things like that? Why do we see all that? I mean, Jesus, he preached a lot of violence and really bad things, but he didn't kill anybody. He didn't torture anybody. He didn't do any of that himself. But Muhammad did. And this is the question now. Why is it that there are so many bad things said about Muhammad, who said, you only allowed 4 wives except for me. I'm allowed more. Why is that? And the only answer is to show that he was a human being, to show that he was a sinner, even though it said that he didn't sin, but he was a sinner. So this is quite weird. So there are different takes and different explanations to this, but I don't know anything about this. Why? I have not made up my mind why you read so many bad things about Muhammad.
Yeah, and it's funny too, like it's also the bad things are practically even admitted by Islamic sources themselves too. So, yeah. And were they, you kind of also question, were these things, were they even seen as bad things during that time? So you also like get that question a bit. And then there's, even Dan Gibson made a good point that the Hadith book, they seem contradictory, but they seem to be more like law books, or law, like, in law you have like precedents and case study or like case law. So Hadith seems to be more like case law, but Muhammad, I think you mentioned it earlier, seems to be the placeholder for said precedents.
Yeah.
That how you brush your teeth, how you urinate, or something like that.
This is how I see it, exactly.
Yeah. Like he's the placeholder for the precedent of how to do wudu, or if you do it 5 times, or if you pray 7 times.
And to show like that you can.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I can feel that I've been talking a lot. So now I'm going to keep quiet. Anybody else? Come on. What do you guys say? Nick, you had some things. Have I left anything out?
Yeah, I want to bring up a few points on the non-Islamic scholars as well, because you talked mainly about this. I don't remember if you brought up the Sirah and his life story, but there were some points with Karl-Heinz Oolong and Volker Popp that basically say that, there is no proof for him actually existing.
Yes, this I showed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like with what do you call it? The sources that we see with the earlier sources, it sounds more. I also, yes, something I also saw in the debate between Jay Smith and David Wood, that Jay Smith seems to, be convinced that this person called Iyas bin Khabisa is the historical Muhammad that we're looking for. and Iyas bin Khabisa is like a Lahmid, the governor. But he's basing him off the fact that this is a Persian, this seems to be more of a Persian story. But then, there's a lot of holes, we're not even sure, because there's just nothing that, indicates to that. And especially with Muhammad's lineage too, this is a very detailed lineage. And it starts with, not with Abdul Manaf. They're also called, instead of Bani Hashim, they're also called children of Manaf, to Abdul Manaf. That's where it starts from. Abdul Manaf, then you have Hashim, then you have Abdul Muttalib, and then you have Abu Talib. And Abu Talib was the uncle, and Abdullah was the father. Yes. So
are you talking about this one?
Yes. So we have, before Abdul Manaf, we have Hakim, Kilab, Murad, Qab, Ghalib, Fihr, Malik, Al-Nasr, Al-Nadir. So we have all these up till Adnan, up until this is a very detailed lineage. This is what I kind of want to see. Where did they exactly come up with this lineage from? What was the first reference? I believe, is it the Sirah that they referenced this lineage to? The Sirah?
I don't recall the Sirah going to this level of detail that it mentions all these people.
Right, yeah. Because I know lineages can definitely be fabricated for sure, because even Mansur sort of fabricated his lineage to say that I'm the descendant of Ibn Abbas. So, and I think that's how he justified his caliphate when it was during the civil war with the Umayyads. So that's how, according to Islamic sources, that's how he justified his rule. But we have nothing from the Umayyads, surprisingly.
Exactly.
From anywhere. So it just begs the question, where did all this information come from, or who are they exactly inspired from to create this character?
Okay, is there anything now? Have you guys kept an eye on the chat? Because I've been talking nonstop. I didn't look at the chat at all.
Yeah, I did put in the private chat that Walla Walla TV or whatever his name is wanted to debate, but I did mention to him on the chat to come into our Discord to discuss more.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's another thing I mentioned. I remember we mentioned the competition. I think there's this YouTube channel. It's also an ex-Muslim channel. They mentioned, I'll send you the link to. They mentioned that there were some leader prophets, Tuleha, Saf, and as well as Musaylama. These people they emerged, leader prophets emerged. They were addressing the power vacuum in that region, and Muhammad just happens to be the so-called winner of that power struggle. So Muhammad just happened to win, or if this person even existed, that is, because there were lots of leader prophets at the time, and they emerged.
Mustafa, how dare you say that? How much is Israel paying you to say that?
Man, I'm still waiting for my paycheck, but it snowed today, so it's got delayed again.
Okay. All right. Is there anything that we have left that is obvious, or that open questions, or anything that somebody pointed out that we can still address?
Yeah, the only thing that we got to address is why you guys are all doing, or why we're all doing Satan's work. He's going to say, I know why I'm doing it, because I'm getting extra money to put Satan as my profile picture, but maybe just discussing again or reiterating why exactly we wanted to prove that Muhammad, either he exists or doesn't exist, or why it's a key factor in our topic this month.
Yeah, there's a question, an interesting question. How many children of Muhammad survived a not? Well, technically, if you asked a Shia, like according to Shia theology, and maybe to an extent Sunni theology, he had 12 descendants, like the 12 imams, right? So the descendants are actually from the line of Fatima, his daughter, and his son-in-law Ali. Like there's this misconception that Ali is his son, so that's where the lineage continues. Then there's a lot of people who claim to be Sayyid, even to this day, that they're descended from Muhammad. Even Aga Khan, the Ismaili leader, the spiritual leader of the Ismaili community, he claims to be a descendant of Muhammad himself too. So we do have descendants, or claim to be descendants of Muhammad, lots of them. And I think Aga Khan even has a detailed, lineage that traces up to, I think Zainul Abidin, or I think up to Muhammad Baqir, which is like who was the great grandson of Muhammad supposedly. And then we have also the Jafar al-Sadiq as well, who founded the school of thought of Jafar, like the Jafari school of thought. And then he had his students, Hanafi, Hanbal, and then their students became, there's 5 separate schools of thought emerged. And Jafar is supposedly a descendant of Muhammad, according to Jafari theology as well. So, we don't know we can't verify if they were, were precisely descendants, but this is what the theology says.
Okay, so in other words, we have conclusively shown that there is no conclusive evidence. And I think that's all that we can say about it.
That's pretty much it.
So why then are Muslims so convinced that he existed? Is it really only because the Sunnah said so? Is that really it?
Well, it kind of relies on belief, right? Like, this was a man that was sent by God, and he guided them, and he gave them this empire, and he brought them this glory, and he's their hero. He's like the figure, like King Arthur, the chosen one, who was the hero. So I think there's this once, especially I remember even looking at the existence of Jesus, and you can compare the existence of Muhammad as well. They have very similar situation where you have writings much later, and you can't exactly conclude that these figures like this even exist. And with Muhammad, it's interesting that the name doesn't even appear to much. It's worse with Muhammad's situation, a lot worse.
Mustafa, I think a question came up for you specifically in the chat.
Is it 80%? Yes, that's Shia information, definitely. I did state that this is from Shia theology. I myself am of Shia background too. So if anything, even the Shia information, it's very detailed. But the problem with a lot of Shia sources is they also come very much later too. They come around the same time as Bukhari himself. So it doesn't exactly, help us with, establishing the existence of Muhammad. Even, not only Muhammad, but even his spiritual successor Ali as well. Muhammad and Ali seemed to be the 2 important figures. And I don't know where I was going with this.
Yeah, go ahead. Bring the other heavyweight boxers in. Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. You got to bring all those. I'm rubbing off on you, Mustafa.
Oh, of course. Stops Muhammad's mother for 4 years. Was she really?
Yeah, I heard this. You can read this. It's quite funny. I mean, if you read the Sirah, and if you read all the texts, I mean, you don't know how much is fabricated and how much is not, and you really don't know. some stuff is really ludicrous. And if you go to the text now, what I've done is I've made a compilation of all this stuff here. And I've taken all these texts and then gone one level lower than what we did today, because today we only covered like 1 hour. But you need a hell of a lot more to go and investigate all these different sources. The only thing what we need to understand is we have the sources as in Quran, Muhammad does not exist. In the Hadith, Muhammad exists. And in the Sirah, Muhammad exists. Do we have anything else? No. So we only have Islamic texts. Now the Quran as such, if it did contain something about Muhammad, the Quran is unreliable. We've learned that by now. We know the Hadiths are full of contradictions. They contradict the Quran. The Quran contradicts the Hadith. The Hadith contradict themselves. And they're totally unreliable too, because they contain a lot of nonsense. Now, why would anybody trust the Hadith? Why would anybody trust a single source which says, okay, Muhammad existed because I, Muhammad, say so. I exist, therefore I exist. That's quite strange. Then you have the Sirah, which is already centuries later, which gives you a detailed account of what Muhammad did, good and bad. But that's it. You only have Muslim sources. As soon as you start going outside, they don't make sense. They don't mention Muhammad. There's one that does mention Muhammad. All the others don't. And then we saw that they are like decades and centuries later, like far away. How would somebody in I don't know, past the Caspian Sea, how would he be able to testify that Muhammad existed? How does that work? It doesn't.
Yeah, and that kind of sources is what is essentially like saying my diary says I'm the biggest man on the planet. Like it. Yeah. We don't know how real it, like we can't take those to heart as well because they're known to exaggerate someone who's they're a great king or something, or lord or deity or whatever you want to call him.
So what we see is that these people merely reflect the hearsay. In other words, they repeat what Muslims believed, and then they put that out there as a fact. And that is all we have. Now, if I go and look at the parallels, if I, for example, compare Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, I've said this before. In the beginning, there's a hell of a lot of activity. Then there's relative quiet. Then there's one incident. Like in Moses, it was, I don't know, that he studied something or became, I can't remember what it was even. With Jesus, it was that he suddenly was in the temple and he was teaching the scholars about religion as a 12-year-old. And then with Muhammad, it was that he was 25 and he married the 40-year-old Khadija and progressed from camel herder to merchant.
Oh, you even forgot the he was stopped by a Christian monk. And on the way, because like when he went to trade with Abu Talib, and then the Christian monk is like, no, this is a prophet, you have to hide him. And Abu Talib like hit him. Yeah, have you heard that one?
Yeah, but that's later. That's then the beginning of his prophecy.
No, this is actually like when he's a child. Muhammad's a child.
So I didn't hear that one. No, I only know the later one.
Yes, Abu Talib knew that this was a prophet, apparently. Allegedly.
No, this I haven't read.
Yes,
I don't remember reading that. Yeah, this did not make any impact on me because I always have this idea that in the beginning you have a lot of activity, then you have a couple of years break, then something happens, then you have a couple of years break, and then in Moses he gets the task of leading the Israelites back home to the promised land. Jesus starts his his teaching, and that also at the age of 30 or something. And with Muhammad is at the age of 40. Yeah. So this for me there are some parallels. Yes. And there are also parallels because Jesus, it's the same situation that you don't have any contemporaries. You only have decades later people repeating what Christians believe. Then you have Nazareth, which didn't exist at the time, which was projected there, which doesn't have the geographical features that are talked about in the Bible. So there are a lot of parallels if you compare these three figures. So that's basically it. Okay, that's it from my side. Anything else on Muhammad that we can contribute that would indicate that he did or did not exist? And if anybody still wants to discuss this, I mean, we're all available on the whatchamacallit, on the Discord server.
Yeah. I think like the main point just to add is or just to bring up is like most people there are a few people who did invite to debate, so maybe taking it to Discord to have a chat with the Muslims there might be the best course of action.
Yeah, but they will come. Okay, yeah. My prediction is they will bring up exactly these sources because they haven't looked at them. They will just repeat them, and that's it. Okay, closing statements. And then, no, sorry, the Hadith of the week. Oh, I'm slipping up here. This is the Hadith of the week, narrated by our friend Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's Apostle saying regarding Ramadan, whoever prayed at night in it, in other words, the month of Ramadan, out of sincere faith and hoping for a reward from Allah, then all his previous sins will be forgiven. Yeah, but hang on. Then,
What?
Yeah, exactly. Then a couple can have sex. They don't need to go through all the things that I portrayed, leaving Islam, taking a slave, having sex, then coming back and all sins. No, you just pray. You just say, pray. I really, 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 really believe that you exist and I want a reward from you. And then you're okay. So you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, this just doesn't add up. Like, this is so silly. Like, I can just pray this night and everything's okay.
Exactly. Get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying. Whoever trusts the Hadith, I mean, you're lost. That's. I'm sorry. I don't think this makes any sense.
Oh, there's the caveat. It has to be sincere faith. Sincere.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, closing statements.
I think Rob had something to say.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if any Muslims will actually provide any additional sources. Thank you to Stops and to Mustafa and Nick for that. I think the document and the discussion have been very interesting. And I want to see if Muslims will bring anything. If they don't, one would expect them to be a bit more hesitant about making strong claims. But as I think most of us know, that's not what most Muslims do, out of ignorance or hubris or whatever it may be. But I think that's been a very interesting exercise. I've got that document of Stops as well, so I'll have a look through that when time permits. But let's see what response we get from this, if any.
Rob, I have to say that you sounded like an air hostess for the past 2 minutes. Good job. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
And thank you guys. It was I wish we could go on and on. Like we could do this forever. Closing statements. Like I might add this too. Like I just have this speculation. It's just speculation at best. I feel like this figure, this Muhammad, whoever this person was, may have just been a king or a ruler, and I feel like he's more of a legend. Like a legend, it fits the picture better because then the oral stories just grew and grew and grew and became larger than life. So that's my ending speculation.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think it was actually intended to last so long. It's just that it caught on and then it developed a life of its own. And then people themselves added more and more and more.
Yeah, exactly. Like he might have just been a historical hero or something like that, and then just the founder of the empire or something, and then just boom.
I think it's more likely that somebody existed who somehow managed, who was charismatic, who managed to somehow unite the different Arab tribes, and who went on the rampage, and then this became like a Robin Hood and kind of figure, and then he sort of got this prophet. Rucksack then sort of attributed to him, and this is how it grew, and then it just developed from there. Anyway, ladies, gents, others, thank you very much. This was the Gin and Tonic Show on the 23rd of April. Next week we're going to have the final segment on Muhammad, and we're going to look at his role today, Can Muhammad be justified today in non-Islamic countries? And the human rights in Islam, and how sensitive are Muslims when it comes to Muhammad. Guys, thank you very much. We'll see you next week at the same time, same place, same everything. Thank you very much to the people in the chat for being with us. Thank you for all the spirited exchange. That was very kind. And thank you to the panel. Well, I see 2 have already left. Okay. We'll see you next week, next Friday on the Gin and Tonic Show. Good night.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Good night, everybody.